Hello, and welcome to episode 140 of the Book Binge, where we're doing yet another monthly reading wrap up and TBR video, including my book of the month for February, which I'll tell you what was pretty hard to choose. February was an absolutely bonkers reading month for me, and it wasn't just because of me reading a million things, or what seemed like a million things, because some of those things were quite long, in which I finished surprisingly quickly, but also because of just how good almost everything that I read was. It was really good month for me. And furthermore, it almost would have been a little bit more bonkers than it would have been because I decided to listen to a little bit of music the last few days. I'm recording this on Thursday, February 29th. The last 3 days have been mostly empty with reading because of how much reading I did throughout February and because I had some music to catch up on anyway. So this video would have been a slight bit crazier if I had been feeling a little bit crazier this week. But with that being said, speaking of the crazy month of February in terms of reading, let's talk about what I read last month. First off, we're going to start with Murderous Fairies by Nicole Barona, the writing, one of the pseudonyms of one of my friends. And I'll say I didn't enjoy this book quite as much as I enjoyed the first one in the series. The series isn't fully meant for me, it wasn't written for me, so even though I enjoy the stories for what they aren't necessarily my cup of tea, and I enjoyed the first one of these a little bit more than I enjoyed the second one, so I would say that Murderous Fairies is the only novel or anything longer than a short story that I read this month that I would say wasn't like a slam dunk for me in one way or another, which is a little bit unfortunate. But when you have competition like what I had for the rest of the month, this actually kind of makes a little bit sense. So let's just go right into the other books that I read this month. All four of these next things that I'm going to talk about almost made my book of the month, like could have been in that slot. Obviously one of them actually won that slot of book of the month, but the other three could have as well. The first one of these is, surprisingly enough, The Crying of Lot 49, and even though this is kind of only a novella, it's really not that long of a story, only 150 pages. This is a fun story that is a satire not just on the mystery novel. That's the thing that I think everybody will realize if they read it, but it's also kind of a satire as well in my mind of the journey of self-discovery that the main character goes on. There's a lot of really goofy stuff about this that Pynchon did, but a lot of other really cool stuff that were really good. And while some of the thematic material doesn't land for me, like in a personal sense, like I don't agree with it, this was something that one of my friends said, it ultimately comes down to a pretty nihilistic view of things, view of life, essentially, and the way that life goes. While I don't necessarily agree with that aspect of the thematic material, I loved the way that Pynchon handled it in this story. It actually felt really fitting for the story that he was telling, and I just really enjoyed it the whole way through. I was really, really surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did. The next book that I read, I was expecting to take about a week on, and I got it done in 2 days. I think just 2 days. I think I read part one on that Thursday and then the rest of it on Friday. Either way, it was The Crossing by Cormac McCarthy, another surprise hit for me. While I don't love The Crossing the way that I love No Country for Old Men, for instance, I did really enjoy it in ways that I didn't enjoy All the Pretty Horses or The Road. And part of that was because I think I connected with the main protagonist, Billy, a lot more than I did the protagonist of the first book, who was John Grady, I guess his name was. I forgot it there for a little bit. And the journey that he goes on, and more specifically, the three journeys were really impactful, all in their own ways. I actually wrote a pretty in-depth review of this. I think I wrote a pretty in-depth review of everything that I read this month, actually, which is kind of crazy. All the books that I read this month. And I think The Crossing just really hit for me, even though, it's, like I said, I don't love it the same way that I love No Country for Old Men, but I did really like it. And that one came as a big surprise. I mean, I was hoping that I would like it more than All the Pretty Horses based off of several of my friends liking The Crossing the best of the trilogy, but yeah, I'm anticipating that I'll like it the best of the trilogy as well. The next book that I got through was another big one, but one that also went pretty quick. I got it done in 8 days. East of Eden by John Steinbeck, one of my most anticipated reads, not for just the year, but ever, really. This one has come highly recommended by a ton of people, and also one that I just got myself really excited for. And normally when I get myself really excited for something, I tend to be disappointed. And that did not happen with East of Eden. Although there are some aspects of it that feel a little bit strange to love, such as the fact that a lot of the characters and certain aspects of the plot are caricatures and meant to represent something. They're allegorical in some sense. It all really worked for me, and Steinbeck struck a really, really great balance, almost an impossible balance, in making characters that feel like they're both caricature, they're both allegorical, and also real people. It's really striking how well he did that, to the degree that I don't think a single other person could, has, or will ever be able to do characters the way that Steinbeck did in this story, and I commend him for that. Of course, the story itself and the way that I was affected by the journeys of some of the characters was also very good as well, but really just the character work is like the standout thing about East of Eden. The next thing that I read, which I was very surprised to have finished this month, was the one that I started back in December. Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. While not as epic or as, I think, broadly recommendable, that's the word, not as broadly recommendable or epic or as cool as War and Peace was, Anna Karenina is really cool character study in what I found to be the opposite way that Steinbeck's book was a really great character study, because, well, I said this in my review of this book, but Steinbeck's characters in East of Eden are like caricatures that he made human. Steinbeck's characters in Anna Karenina are humans that he made into representative caricatures. So he was trying to make a point with the people that he wrote about, while Steinbeck was trying to put people into the thing that he wanted to say. If that makes any sense at all. Probably doesn't, but that's the way that I felt. So reading these two books back to back, I was 40% of the way through Anna Karenina by the time I started it again this month, but finishing this book after reading all of East of Eden made just such a fantastic, it was just a great way to round out the month. It was amazing. I really, really, really liked it. And I really liked all four of these books. These books were incredible. Although I will note a few short stories that I read, the first of which I can't actually talk about right now, but I will as soon as I am able to. The other stories were The Duc de la Omelette by, if I could move my finger in the right direction, Edgar Allan Poe. This story did not work for me. It was only 2 out of 5. There's some cool stuff about it, and I like it a little bit more in retrospect, and that's why it got 2 out of 5 instead of 1 out of 5. Not a fantastic story. And then The Alchemist by H.P. Lovecraft, which I didn't enjoy quite as much as The Beast in the Cave, but was a decent story in its own right. As for the book of the month, of these 4 picks, what do I even choose? Like, I genuinely have no idea. I have an item selected in my notes to put for book of the month, but I don't know if that's my book of the month, because all 4 of these are like right there on the same footing. Even though 2 of them were rated 5 stars and 2 of them were rated 4 stars, it's kind of one of those weird things. I don't want to make a decision. Gun to my head, I will pick East of Eden for my book of the month, because I did read the whole thing this month, first of all, which would technically disqualify Anna Karenina in some sense from being book of the month. But I think both in terms of enjoyment and in terms of what I could get out of it, and as well as in terms of what I could analyze, East of Eden had the most in it, even compared to these 2 books, The Crying of Lot 49 and The Crossing. But even so, I still really enjoyed all 4 of these books, and I think if you as a commenter were to say, oh, he put Anna Karenina as his book of the month for February 2024, I wouldn't correct you, because you're not wrong. Like I said, putting East of Eden as my book of the month for the month, but all 4 of these, it's just pick any of them. Pick whichever of these 4 you like best, and that's my book of the month. That's how I'll reconcile this, this decision of mine. Next up, we're going to talk about what I have planned to read this month, which is also a little bit much, a little bit crazy in some ways. And I don't think I'll get through it all. It kind of depends on when the timing of one other thing happens. But let's just start off with the book that I think I'm going to finish first. That will be Cities of the Plain by Cormac McCarthy, the 3rd book in the Border trilogy. After finishing The Crossing, I went into this one a little bit more hopeful than I think I was initially going into it. And I'm already a little bit into it, like 55 pages, 60 pages actually into part one. So I had like 25 pages remaining in part one. I'm not disliking it. I'm actually liking it, but I'm not hooked, if that makes sense. So I'm enjoying what I've gotten out of this book so far since I've started it today. But it's not like come out and grabbed me the way that The Crossing did. So we'll kind of see how this goes moving forward, but that's where I'm at. I expect to finish this weekend while I'm out of town because of doing audio slash immersive reading for it, whereas all this other stuff I'm doing physical, or eyeball reading, I suppose, which I don't know if I'll be able to get much done this weekend while I'm out of town, because you know how trips are. You can never really anticipate when or how you're going to be able to read. The other book that I have technically started is The Fires of Heaven, Book 5 of the Wheel of Time, which I'll say after a 2-month break from the series, I'm going into this one with much better expectations that I went into The Shadow Rising. That's not to say that I expect it to be better than The Shadow Rising, just, kind of mindset-wise. I think I'm going into this a little bit more balanced, a little bit less eclectic, a little bit less kind of all over the place in terms of my expectations. I've just started the book and I expect it to be whatever it's going to be. And I hope to like that. We'll see what happens. That's basically how I went into Eye of the World, and I ended up loving that, so we'll see. I've only read the prologue so far, so I can't really say much about how much I'm enjoying it, because it's, like 15 pages out of almost 700, so, it's not really much to talk about so far. The other book that I'm going to read this month, that is like the guaranteed I'm going to read this month, because I actually have a buddy read planned with Minna for it, is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Weir reads pretty quickly, so I don't really have much trouble saying I plan to read this next week once I'm back from this little trip out of town. I basically plan to have it done through the week, before even the weekend, so that I can spend the weekends reading Fires of Heaven. So, like I said, Andy Weir reads pretty quickly, so I don't believe I'll have too much trouble with that. We'll kind of see what happens, but I do plan to get to this one next week. And after loving The Martian and having read it a bunch of times, and also seeing the movie a couple times and really liking the movie as well, and also thinking that Artemis is underrated, I have high hopes for Project Hail Mary. The next book that I want to get to in March, which may or may not happen, this entirely depends on the next item on this list, is House of Hades by Rick Riordan. 4th book in Heroes of Olympus. I finally got back to the series in January and the first couple days of February when I read Mark of Athena, the 3rd book in the series, and I wanted to jump into this one pretty soon, but I didn't wind up being able to have time for it, and I don't think I'll have time for it in March either. We'll just kind of see what happens. Like I said, I plan to finish Cities of the Plain this weekend. I'm going to do Project Hail Mary the week after that. So really, I could absolutely have time for this, but it depends on the next item, which I'm not really going to say anything about right now. It is another secret reading project. It's actually the secret reading project that I mentioned in the last one of these videos, but I can't really speak more about because I haven't gotten it yet. So we'll kind of see what happens. I'm expecting to get that one pretty soon, and then I'm also going to be working on something else as well that I forgot about that I'll actually talk about when we get there. Yeah, so that's the novel reading plans for the month. As for the other reading plans, I have, if my Face ID would actually, accept my face, that would be pretty nice. I will be reading, hopefully over the weekend, I can read and finish Chess Story by Stefan Zweig. Again, if I'm butchering that name, I apologize. If you speak the language, correct me, please, because I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. This is a novella and not a short story, so the fact that I'm actually covering this on Short Story Sundays this coming Sunday, and the fact that when you're seeing this video, I'm probably already finished reading this story, it doesn't really matter. This is what I'm planning to be reading, so, hopefully I get it done pretty quickly. Hopefully the fact of being out of town doesn't, get in the way of that too much. Otherwise, the other short story that I plan to read this month is from this 3rd volume of the collected fiction of William Hope Hodgson. It is the story called, oh man, what is it called? If I could find, the proper table of contents, that would also be pretty helpful. It is The Voice in the Night. That's what I'm going to be covering on Short Story Sundays in a couple weeks after Chess Story. So that's the basic reading plans that I have. If I have time, I still kind of want to go back and listen to Forced Perspectives by Tim Powers, the second book in the Victory and Castine trilogy by Tim Powers, like I said. But with all this other stuff, I'm not sure. Given that I did a lot of my reading in February, actually reflecting on this a bit, a lot of my reading was audio and or immersive. So, there's something to be said for how much I was able to get read pretty much because of that. Crying of Lot 49 was immersive. The Crossing was sort of immersive, but like 70% audio for me. And then Anna Karenina, I was reading it for the first 40%, like entirely immersive, like maybe 5% audio. I listened to the last 60%, like 80% of that last 60% was audio versus immersive, but that's because a lot of that was also spent while shoveling because winter time. It's great. Either way, because I have a little bit of time this month, maybe I'll be able to throw Forced Perspectives in as an audio read. No idea, no plans to do it. March seems like it's pretty packed, so that's pretty gnarly. And part of that is also because of Fires of Heaven. I have no idea, how long it'll take me to read some of these projects because Fires of Heaven is going to be read, and because I don't plan to read that entire book this month. So what I'm able to get otherwise depends completely on that, basically. So considering being gone this weekend, I'm testing some streaming stuff next weekend. I'm been busy at work the last couple weeks, and I don't see that changing over these next couple weeks because of reasons. And potential secret project, like I said, that is coming at any time. Plus another project starting immediately that I hinted at. Yeah, it's not looking very good that I'll finish all my stuff in March, but we'll see what happens. Otherwise, I've been rambling in this video for way longer than I wanted to and planned to, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this video here. I'm going to stop rambling. I'm going to let you go about your day. I'll be back on Thursday with my first Wheel of Time diary for Fires of Heaven, so if you've been following along with that journey, that video will be out in a couple of days. So that's pretty exciting, I think. But with that being said, I'm going to check out now. Thank you guys for watching. I'll be back in the next video.